It is United Methodist Church's continued contribution and donations to the Black College Fund, and primarily to Bennett College, which helps support new handicap accessibility equipment, chapel upgrades, including Bibles, and opportunities for travel. For this, let's give United Methodist Church a round of applause. Appreciate this continuity which provides us. May God always strengthen the bond between United Methodist Church and Bennett College.
Beloved, we shall be united. Every man that has soul not reduced 1873. Let's meet tomorrow night at the This institution somewhere teachers under the offices of the Methodist Episcopal Church North will be established at Greersboro. They will be put in the course of construction this year. This normal school became a college of well dear in our hearts today, Bennett College, which has produced great women such as Dr. Esther Terry, the first Bennett alumna to serve as president of this great institution, politicians such as Honorable Yarn Johnson, Class 64, and current considered Gladys Robinson, Class 71. Generous philanthropists such as Susie Powell, 1964 graduate, and Dr. George Dixon was given the college the largest individual gift in history of $1 million. And the recent alumna, Marissa James, Class 2003 season, who has made it a path for young girls to make our social growth website and self-application. Will all already stand. As proud alumni, we are pleased to stand with the many women who contribute to this world through their leadership, service, and social justice. As students, some of you may be asked to join us women through your own contributions, and may we all continue to build the great legacy of our dear alma mater, Bennett College.
Good morning. To President Paul, Interim Public Solicitor, Reverend Dr. Lee Board of Trustees, alumni, staff, students, distinguished guests, friends of Bennett College, I am Dr. Latoya Brooks, and I bring greetings on behalf of the faculty. On this day, we celebrate Bennett College as she dared to grow and shape the lives of Black women. For 142 years, women have found Bennett to be the ideal place to foster the consistent, constant rhythm of ideas while challenging women to engage in self-reflection, self-definition, and actively participate in activism. In the words of Orly Lord, if I did define myself for myself, I'd be conscious of other people's realities of being and being alive. We, the faculty, are honored to be women while creating safe spaces to confront systems of oppression and encouraging Black women to be bold leaders now and in the future. Thank you. President Bennett Hall. church. It would be dedicated to educating free Africans and their descendants. On behalf of the staff, if we are to ensure the future of this unique and irreplaceable college, we must continue to address the compelling and challenging problems of our times. We live in a contentious society where polarizing views and hateful, mean-spirited rhetoric is not only accepted, but applauded. Your heart to stand up for those who can't stand. Be a part of all that is good and decent. Be an ambassador for the kind of world that you want to live in. We must continue to prepare our students for scholarship, entrepreneurship, and leadership for America and the global community. I am confident that we will meet the challenges of advancing this unique and irreplaceable college.
Faculty and staff of the college, association on behalf of students. I'm sure I've served a couple of times, but I'm in the days of the group of ministries led together in the basement corners of your church, now in the St. Matthews, and worked what we know as St. College. These men and women were elite leaders. You're my church president, we are focused on your elite leaders. My job is not done until each of you, my ministers, understand that you are all leaders, and that more importantly, you are destiny leaders. Your destiny leaders not only because you are children of God, but because of the people who came before you on this campus. The emancipated slaves that started this institution were leaders even if they didn't consider themselves to be. They were leaders because they left behind something. They left behind a legacy. Great leaders are not great leaders because they are really elite, but because of their ability to see a certain power. Our founders left behind a legacy for us to turn windows to follow. According to the college, on the website, more than 5,000 of us have graced this illustrious institution called Bennett College. Our founders provide us with the opportunity to transform from girls to women into talented leaders that already exist in so many of us. Let us remember on this day that we stand on the shoulders of some phenomenal men and women. Carry that same spirit of perseverance that our founders did. Get comfortable, don't get comfortable with letting things go to hands. If you see an area that could use your assistance and you most appropriate them, fix it. Our founders wanted an education and they fix it. Our founders have showed us that leaders leave behind legacies. So my question to you today is, are you building a legacy? Thank you.
As the choir gets in place, I want to thank Chairwoman Foster, Ms. McMichael, Ms. Wynn, Dr. Brooks, Dr. Truesdale, and Trustee Curry for those wonderful and inspiring. Oh, you all can do better than that. Praise these children. Trustee Curry just spoke to us about the leadership that we want our students to exemplify. And here we see our students' choir, conducted by Ms. Danielle Jeffries, class of 2017, accompanied so accomplishingly on the piano by Ms. Sasha King, class of 2018. That's leadership. Courageous, bodacious leadership. Thank you, ladies, for that beautiful, beautiful spiritual. It is my pleasure today. I am so proud to introduce to you our distinguished speaker of the hour, the Reverend Dr. Renita J. Weems, Vice President, Academic Dean, and Professor of Biblical Studies at American Baptist College. Ordained an elder in the AME Church since 1984, Dr. Weems is a former member of the faculty of Vanderbilt University Divinity School, where she was the first African-American woman to be tenured. She is a former Cosby visiting professor of Spelman College and the first African-American woman to earn a PhD in Old Testament, the first in the country to earn a PhD. She is a biblical scholar, an academic administrator, a writer, and an ordained minister with scholarly insights into modern faith, biblical text, and the role of spirituality in everyday lives. When I tell you I heard this woman over 20 years ago and have been touched and imprinted by her words ever since. She is a prolific author of numerous books, commentaries, and articles on the Bible and prophetic religion. Among these are Just a Sister Away, I Asked for Intimacy, and Battered Love, Marriage, Sex, and Violence in the Prophets. Her 1999 book, Listening for God, A Minister's Journey Through Silence and Doubt, won the Religious Communicators Council's prestigious 1999 Wilbur Award for Excellence in Communicating Spiritual Values to the Secular Media. Dr. Weems received her PhD in the Old Testament from Princeton Theological Seminary and her Master's of Divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary, as well as a Bachelor of Arts from Wellesley College. She was the first African-American woman to deliver the prestigious Lyman Beecher Lecture at Yale University. Dr. Weems is featured in Black Stars, African-American Religious Leaders, a collection of biographies of some of the most important Black religious leaders over the last 200 years, including such impressive figures as Adam Clayton Powell, Elijah Muhammad, Sojourner Truth, Howard Thurman, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. To tell you what a privilege and an honor it is for Bennett College to welcome to her pulpit this morning the Reverend Dr. Renita Weems.
Thank you so very much for that beautiful introduction. It is certainly my pleasure to be here to share in this very important moment in the life of along with friends that I am seeing in the audience. Monica, I do see you there, as well as the administration and the staff of Bennett College, and above all, to the students of Bennett College who are here dressed in their white and looking so beautiful. Won't we put our hands together for these absolutely beautiful students? My commitment is to women's education. Although I have spent a greater part of my academic career at universities where there are both men and women, certainly I graduated from a women's college there at Wellesley in Wellesley, Massachusetts. Cherished my 2 years at Spelman College in Atlanta, there as a Cosby visiting professor. But because of the years that when I graduated from college, and that was back when let's see, that was when dinosaurs roamed the earth. long time ago. It was when I was in college, but certainly in the 70s, the late 70s when I graduated, certainly that was toward the end, the decline of the women's movement, if you will. And so much of my own college education there at a women's college was certainly shaped by the questions of, at that time, certainly the feminist movement. And so I must admit that my own commitments, my own natural predisposition is that when Bennett College, when President Fuse, when this particular president, certainly as a friend of mine, as a colleague of mine, as someone I have known, even if tangentially we met 20 years ago at Duke University with a common friend who I have tweeted and who has now tweeted me back. I want you to know, I tweeted Carla Holloway before I came up into this beautiful sanctuary, and she's already tweeted back saying, please tell Rosalind I sent her my highest regards. And so we have known each other, and so your president is a woman of high regard across the country, and you are so blessed to have her. Why don't you put your hands together for Dr. Rosalind Hughes Hall. And I loved her introduction of her husband to the first gentleman. I think I'm going to use that. I'm going to have to get me a gentleman like that so I may introduce him that way. This is Founders Day, and I am always reminded of how important Founders Days, convocations, baccalaureate, graduation, and those of us on the faculty and those of us in the administration, we have known our share of the comings and goings of students. And we know how important these kinds of memories are, how important these kinds of events are. You have chosen to come to Bennett College, a college with a rich history, young people, of training leaders. I will not, and I did have on my notepad here the history of Bennett College, but it has already been repeated, so I will not repeat that history. But it is a rich history, and there is something in the Bible that tells us that when you cross over, it says, please pick up 12 stones. And it says, because your children are going to ask you, what meaneth these stones? And you are to tell the children over and over and over again that these stones represent that the Lord brought us safely over the river, and the Jordan River. And so if we tell the history of Bennett College yet again, about being founded in the basement in 1873 at Warnersville Methodist Episcopal Church, it is because Scripture says there is something important about retelling the history over and over and over again, so that it might be imprinted on our hearts, and so that we might see how far we have come and how far God has brought us, and on whose shoulders you stand. But I want to particularly point out one thing that I did not know about Bennett College, and as a person who is a student of history, and I was just stunned that I did not know this about Bennett College, and I think it is very appropriate, even in a Founders Day convocation experience, that I should learn that it was indeed in 1959 and 1960 in the Woolworth sit-ins that much of that kind of coming together and planning it out and organizing it was done on the campus of Bennett College. Although AT&T gets the credit, and the four wonderful brothers there at AT&T certainly did an important job of being the ones who sit in, but that was the sisters. It was the sisters. It was the sisters at Bennett College who came together and plotted it out and organized it, and ultimately agreed to the young men going over to Woolworths, but it was indeed the women of Bennett College. So one more time, for history's sake, let's get the history right. I turn our attention to a brief, well, it's not so brief, but I will try to make my comments brief, story in the Old Testament, also known as the Hebrew Bible. Now let me admit something right now. I am reading and speaking to you from an iPad. I am a Flintstone trying to act like I'm a Jetson. All right? I am going to try to do this. I'm going to try to act like screen is not moving, it did not turn off, all of those things, but even though I prefer paper. But when I come to speak to students, I certainly try my best to perpetrate like I am far more modern than I really am. And then scrolling, and then Lord, don't let it turn off, and you know, all of that. We do this because we want to be on the cutting edge. We really do want to be on the cutting edge. But they're in the 4th chapter of the story of Esther, and you know this story so well. You've heard it. You cannot be in the church, the black church in particular, and not have heard this story. But I'm going to just kind of spot read here and there, just so that we might get on board, because there is a particular line that I want us to be mindful of, and I think that is a part of the story that is very helpful here. But let me just go straight to the 4th chapter, 12th verse. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer to her: "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, that you alone will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for God's people will arise from another place. But you and your family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" For who knows why you have come to this place for such a time as this. Many of us are very familiar with this story. It is the story of an orphan girl, motherless, and presumably also fatherless, who has been adopted by her uncle by the name of Mordecai. And through a number of events, she is brought before the king, the Persian king. She is a Jewish girl who is brought before a Persian king and is found to be beautiful and pleasing to him after a debacle in his first marriage. And he ultimately marries this beautiful orphan girl by the name, whose original name is Hadassah, but whose Persian name upon marriage becomes Esther. She is beautiful, she is attractive, she is pleasing to the eye. She is a woman who presumably is unlike his first wife, Vashti. She presumably is submissive and subordinate and is quiet and does not speak up, and above all does not tell the king no like his first wife did. But he chose her because she was both beautiful and presumably submissive. But one day her uncle sends word to her to say, "Listen, I understand that there is a conspiracy in the palace where you live with your king of a husband. And the conspiracy is that all of your people are going to be killed. Use your position as a queen to get to the king to alert him that there is a conspiracy to wipe us out." And Esther, who had not yet come into her own, sends word back to her uncle. "Uncle, I can't do that. Unless the king sends for me, I cannot go. And I'm so sorry that this is happening to our people, but I cannot go." And her uncle sends a word to her to say, "Who do you think you are? How do you think you got there? Let me tell you something. God's going to save God's people. And God wants to use you. But if you don't do it, God is going to use somebody. And how do you think you have come to the place that you have come to? Why do you think you are there? Do you think you are there because you're pretty?
Come on.
Do you think you're there because you got dimples?
Come on.
Do you think you're there because you got a nice weave? Do you think you're there because you got a BA from Bennett College? God put you there for such a time as this. For such a time as this. Most of us do not think of this story, but I want to just direct my comments, the brief comments that I want to make, to for such a time as this. It was the Russian novelist Leo Tolstoy, best known for his books Anna Karenina and War and Peace, who once said that there are really only two stories. You want to be a novelist, you want to be a writer, there are really only two stories in literature. And we keep telling each of them over and over. One of the stories, a stranger comes to town and a hero goes on a quest. In higher education, we live those two stories continuously. Every semester, a new crop of strangers come to town, and every year, a new group of heroes and sheroes go off on their respective quest. There are only two stories. A story about a stranger comes to town, and a story about a hero or shero who goes off on a quest. As first-year students, as sophomores, as juniors, and as seniors, and those in the audience who are graduates of this institution. As faculty, we watch every year, and certainly every year I say to myself, President Fuse Hall, I'm not going to get close to another student. I'm not going to love another student. I'm not going to take another student into my heart. I'm not going to feed another student. I'm not going to drive another student to Wendy's. I am not going to loan another student any money. I am not going to let another. Every time I say that, and yet I look at students and I am reminded when I was a student. And I am reminded of when I too, as a first-generation college student, went away to a school in New England and had no earthly idea where I was going. So I am speaking first and foremost to those for whom this is your first adventure away from home, and you're already feeling homesick, and you're already thinking about dropping out and going back home. And I say to you, go back home to what? Come on. What are you going back home to? To work at Wendy's? To work at Panera Bread? Where are you going back home to? For such a time as this, God has brought you to this place, and you've got to learn how to adjust to newness. For others of you, this is your very first time ever having to share a room with anybody, ever having to be on a hall where 12 and 15 people are in the same bathroom. But what are you going back home to? Panera Bread and Wendy's? If I was you, I would stay right here and watch God use you and watch God educate you and watch God position you to where you are to go. Back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I was a college student, my parents did not even know, and I did not know, that parents go with you to college to check out the college. I was a first generation, first time black woman student from Atlanta, Georgia, going all the way to Boston, Massachusetts. And when I got there, it was a totally different world. A different world. And I cannot begin to tell you how frightened I was, how intimidated I was, how homesick I was. But I also cannot begin to tell you how grateful I am that I stayed. Because as another philosopher by the name of Søren Kierkegaard once said, life is lived going forward, but it is only understood by looking back. which means that you really only see the hand of God, Esther, when you look back over your life. You don't necessarily see it as you're living your life. If you're living your life, you're just trying to make it one day at a time. You're just trying to get through the next class. You're just trying to write the next paper. You're just trying to pay the next bill. You're just trying to get through the next situation. But it is only when you look back over your life that you can say, that had to be God. Now I see, God, why I went here, and why you took me over there, and why you moved me over here. And now it is only understood when you look back. You don't see it, you don't hear it when Mordecai says to you, you've got to stand up and speak on behalf of your people. It is only when you look back and then you begin to say, that had to be God. And so when I think about how I got to that college and when I was there and how many times I called home and wanted to go back home, and how many times when I went back home, I felt like I should stay home because I was the only one who went away to college. I'm the only one who went to college. I'm the only one who went away to college. I'm the only one who got a college education. And when you go back home after the first year, after the second semester, after the third year, you feel estranged from your family. You feel guilty about an education. You feel like maybe you've got something that the rest of them do not have. But it is only when you look back and say, now God, I understand that as when I became a professor at Vanderbilt, and my father, who did not get past the 9th grade there in Atlanta, Georgia, because he had to drop out to help take care of his sisters and brothers. And when my father came to Vanderbilt and saw all the books in my office as a professor, and my father, who had been an electrician all of his life and eked out of living as a proud black man who really wanted a degree but could never get even his high school diploma, looked at all the books in my office and said, you done read all these books? Yes, sir. And so, you mean to tell me that what you do for a living is read books? Well, kind of, sort of. That's kind of, sort of what it is. He said, all these people want you to do is think. I said, yes, sir. Damn. Excuse me, y'all. He said, then think. I am an electrician. I've suffered humiliation, but my baby had aid to think. For such a time as this. Esther, who knows why you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? It is the best of times and it is the worst of times, but it is your time. It is the time where we have our first African American black president and our first African American black first lady, and they are a beautiful couple. We are in the best of times. It is indeed a time when the election of the first black woman U.S. Attorney General. It is the best of times. But yet it is also tough times for you, because this is September, just a few months after the mysterious killing of Sandra Bland. It is the worst of times also, because it is in the midst of Black Lives Matter, and it is your time to do what the previous generation had not completed doing. And you're going to need the very best of your education. You're going to need the very best of your learning and the very best of your thinking, and everything that you are learning in class, and all that you are learning about soft skills here, and about how to speak publicly, and how to be on time, and how to turn in papers on time. And I who have been always in seminaries, I will tell you one of the things I'm often telling seminarians who are preparing to become preachers and pastors, and they're just ready to become preachers and pastors, but first they must finish Introduction to Old Testament or Introduction to Bible. And I say to them all the time, cubs turn into lions. Which means that if you are a trifling student, you're going to be a trifling worker. We tend to think that we can turn in the paper late, or we tend to think that we can write it at the last minute, or make up excuses about why we didn't get it done, or have our grandmama die for the 14th time by the time we are seniors. But somehow or another, but God, if you just give me a job, I'm going to be on time. I'm going to do my assignments. I'm going to do great presentation. This is the time for you to learn the discipline of writing and working and thinking and staying up all night long. This is your time. When I was at Spelman for those 2 years, I'll tell you what would happen. The young girls would come into my office on the day of the exam, crying about why they couldn't do my exam. And then, well, you know, I just didn't understand you. And then the paper would, and then after you just let them cry a little longer. Well, you see, my boyfriend, I just don't know where he is. I'm like, that's the real answer right there. But let me tell you, grown women learn how to cry and type at the same time. Do I have any witnesses from the grown women in here? You're going to have to learn how to not know where he is and write my paper at the same time. You're going to have to learn how to deal with difficulty and still produce. Uncertainty and still make your presentation. Broken heart and still be able to get up and speak as though your heart is not broken. You got to go to work even when you don't know how you're going to make it. Your parents got you here not because they knew how they were going to make it, except but by the grace and the goodness of God. We are not here because, and the people who brought you here, and the story of Bennett College is not the story of people who knew exactly how it was going to turn out, but they came this far by faith, leaning on the everlasting arms of God. Come on and put your hands together and give God some praise. And so as I come to my close, I will say to you that use your time here wisely. There are 2 words in Greek for time. Chronos, will you say with me chronos? Chronos, the word chronology, and then there is kairos, will you say kairos? Chronos, it is the sequential time. It is the time that says at 18 years old certain things happen, at 21 years old certain things. Chronology, it is moving from the 100 level class to the 200 level class to the 300. That is chronology, that is sequential time, and there are some things we have to do sequentially in time. There is a time when you will graduate after 4 or 5 years, whatever your situation is, but yet there is also, and this is what Mordecai was saying to Esther, there is also a kairos time. That is divine opportunity. That is season. That is opportunity. That is God's time. It has nothing to do with chronology time. That is the time that God sets you up for the thing that you have been born to do, the thing that you have been called to do, and everything else was leading you to this kairos time, that time when you know that everything that you have learned at Bennett, and all the teachers who you have touched and been touched by, everything that they have brought into you now comes into fruition, because now is the time when you stand and now you remember how they told you how to hold your head up and what to wear and what not to wear, and how to speak and how to put sentences together and not have run-on sentences, and let you know what a semicolon is and what a period does. God knows I got to say this. All the run-on sentences that I get from my students, and I say, baby, is there a period anywhere in the house? But there is a Kairos time. There is a time there for each of you in here. You have purpose. That is what Kairos says. What is your purpose? Miles Monroe says your purpose in life is to figure out your purpose in life. There is no crystal ball. You must walk this walk and watch God, and as the president and I were talking earlier, and listen for God. That is your Kairos time. I will close with my own story. I was an economics major at Wellesley. I imagined myself working on Wall Street. That's what was very popular in the late 70s. I wanted to work on Wall Street, and I had this big, huge afro back then. And Merrill Lynch came to town, and I wanted a job at Merrill Lynch. I wanted to be a stockbroker, so I pulled the afro back into a little puff, and I put on my little pumps back then, and I walked across campus, the yard, for the interview with Merrill Lynch, and I wanted that job so badly. I was an economics major, not a home economics major, an economics major, but I didn't get the job, and at 20, when you're 20 and you don't get the job, it just feels like you're gonna die. It feels like a knife in your heart, and every no feels final. But sometimes God knows some stuff that you don't know. And so I went on to become a public accountant with Merrill Lynch, which was one of the top 8 public accounting firms there in Boston. I hated it so much. But things happened. I was able to get to New York 2 years later, and I got the job with Merrill Lynch. I passed the broker's exam, and the first day on the job, I went into the women's bathroom, and I wrote these words: I hate this job. And that was the beginning of my becoming a writer. I had never studied literature at Wellesley, but because I hated Merrill Lynch so much, I would go to 92nd and Amsterdam to a bookstore called Women's Books. And there I just began to read everything from Toni Morrison to Eudora Welty to Virginia Woolf to George Sand to Flannery O'Connor, and I just began to read everything. And at that time I met a friend who was working at Essence, who was an editor. I'm talking to you about Kairos time now. I'm talking about this time that your career, your purpose is not always linear. It's not this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. But sometimes it's over here that leads to over here, that leads to over here, then it leads to over there. And it's not until you connect all those dots and you look back and you see God was in it all the time. And so there I was working for Merrill Lynch, hated the job, absolutely, couldn't even sell any stocks because I was just so poor at it. And the day when the man came to fire me, I knew he was firing me because he called me into his office. But the Holy Ghost had fallen on me, and I just said, you know what, I quit. And so I decided to live on unemployment in New York. You cannot live on unemployment in New York. But I was going to write the great American novel there in New York. And so I'm unemployed. I live in New York. I've got about 18 months of unemployment money. I'm going to write a novel. Of course, I never got to write the novel. And then I heard that, and because I had always been in the church, even though I was going to feminist meetings and poetry readings and listening to Alice Walker, but I had always been in the church, so I kind of accepted this thing called a call to preaching. I didn't really quite know what that meant, but I understood that Princeton Seminary was giving out scholarships to colored girls, and I was a colored girl. So I decided to go over there to Princeton Seminary so that I could finish my novel, because I knew I would get a dorm and I knew I would get 3 meals. And so I figured I'd go on over there and finish up this novel, because how hard could religion be? So I decided to go on and do this little religion thing on the side, because after all, I had been to Sunday school all of my life. And so, but I would write the great American novel, but while I was there. And so as you look at all the things that people have been saying about me in terms of my resume, I'm trying to say to you that, do you hear, Renita, you're going to be a preacher. Renita, you're going to become a professor. Renita, you're going to be the Lyman Beach. No, all you know is you're just saying yes to opportunities. And all you know is that you're just trying to make it one day after all. And then when you look back, you see the hand of God. Yes. Amen. It's when you look back, you say, it just had to be God. You look back and you say, oh God, I was just trying to get from keep one foot in front of the other. But all the while, there you were, opening doors for me. All the time, every time I thought I would give up, there you were, making a way out of no way. All the times I just wanted to just fall on the floor, but there you were, sending teachers into my life, sending people into my life. And so, one day you began to connect the dots. Like when my daughter was little and we began to drive somewhere, and her first question was, are we there yet? And you give her the little puzzle and you say, baby, just take your pencil but why is 2 up here, and why is 3 way over there, and why is 9 way down here, and why is 16 way over there? I just said, just keep connecting the dots. And then one day when she finishes connecting, she said, Mommy, there's a face. Yes, there's a face. You connect the dots and you begin to realize there is a picture of your life. All you were trying to do was connect the dots, but all the while that the Lord was making a way out of no way. Come on and put your hands together and give God some praise. So, this is one day your alma mater, your nourishing mother. That's what alma mater means. Your nourishing mother. She's going to take care of you. She's going to stretch you. She's going to grow you up. And then she pushes you out into the world. But know all the while that the Lord will make a way somehow. That you are coming from a rich stock of women who have gone on before you. And if they could make it, what you mean you can't make it? If they can make it, what do you mean you're going to give up? Come on. You are on the shoulders of strong black women and brown women. You're on the shoulders of women like Harriet Tubman, and you're on the shoulders of women like Ella Baker and Nana Helen Burroughs. You're on the shoulders of women like Fannie Berrier Williams. You're on the shoulders of women like Barbara Jordan and Shirley Chisholm. If the Lord was with them, the Lord will also be with you. Walk together, children. Don't you get tired. But there is a better camp meeting on the other side, and God is there on the other side waiting just for you. God bless you this morning.
Wonderful words. Wonderful words. Thank you so very much. Let's give her another round of applause for that wonderful, wonderful words. I don't know if you can stand up 1 minute, but you talked about some of those iconic, what we call the Bells of Liberty. We have some Bells of Liberty with us this morning. I know we got at least one. Any of you Bells who participated in that historic integration civil rights movement, would you all please stand this morning? I know we got at least one. We got at least one. iconic women. And so you've been another iconic woman to come and grace us here at Bennett College. And on behalf of all of us, we just give you this small token of appreciation, because what a wonderful word you gave to us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And I'm going to tell you, I know the founders of this great college that shouted hallelujah this morning. Oh, we all should get paid to think. Get paid to think. Bales, that's what we're grooming you for. Yes. To get paid to think. Yes. Dr. Weems, your words have inspired us to continue to work on transforming the lives of these young women who will live out the prophecies not only of the Old Testament, not only of Esther, but they will be there for such as their time calls for. We thank you for that powerful lesson of reminding us that we do have purpose, and you are helping us connect the dots that reveals Bennett College in all her glory. God bless you, and may He continue to walk with you. Please know how we appreciate everyone for worshiping with us this morning. I have two brief announcements. We will salute Dr. James Henry Sales, former science professor, with an unveiling of his portrait at 2:00 p.m. in the Pfeiffer Science Building. Also, the final show of Diana Sands, A Certain Toughness of Spirit, written by our own Professor Steve Willis and directed by Professor Beth Ritson and Assistant Professor Ms. Zion Daniels, a class of 2017, is that right? 2016. There she is. All of you. Is Steve still here? Ms. Daniel, Ms. Ritson, would you all please stand? Please stand. These are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And other members of the cast, would you please stand? I saw this show on opening night. I'm telling you, you do not want to miss it. It will occur today at 3 o'clock in the Little Theater. It is a masterful work, and I highly recommend it to you. It is engaging and moving. Learn about yet another iconic figure in our history whose story unfolds in the play. Thank you, Steve, for bringing her to life. Now, would you please, hold on, when I finish this announcement, but I'm going to ask you to please stand and join us in the singing of our alma mater. I will ask you to remain standing for the benediction, and then the audience may be seated as we have the recessional. The marshals will direct you when you may adjourn from the pews. The words of the alma mater are found on the back of the program. Please at this time stand.
God, you have been so faithful to fill us to the overflow, and therefore we are thankful. Now to the God who holds us in magnificent hands and wills only good for all creation. To the one whose love is revealed in the only begotten Son, the Lord Jesus Christ, and to the Spirit dwelling within us, granting us grace and peace and purpose and protection. To the one triune God, we give you glory both now